One of the most popular or most common questions I get when I talk to people about airQ is how much air to use to inflate the device. And I think that's important because the volume of the cuff of the airQ is very small compared to an LMA. So if you put your standard amount of air into airQ that you use when you normally use an LMA, you're going to way overinflate the device, and the intercuff pressure is going to be really quite high. Now that increases the likelihood of traumatic use of the airQ, sore throats after the use, and also nerve injuries. So what I found out is if you leave this red tag on during the insertion, it opens up the valve of the pilot balloon. And if you open up the valve, when you squeeze on the cuff of the airQ device, the air comes out the back. So if you use the red tag on technique and place the airQ with the red tag on, the tissue of the pharynx will fold down onto the cuff of the airQ device, and they'll form an equilibrium. So it'll actually size itself as you do the insertion by slightly deflating the device, and it'll shape itself as well. So when you get done with the insertion of the device, the airQ will be nearly the proper size and nearly the right shape. So all you have to do at that point is just add just a little bit of air to make it sort of increase the pressure of the balloon slightly, and you'll be there. Now, how much air? Typically, I put in about the same amount of air as the size of the device. So at a size 3.5 airQ, which I have in my hands in the mannequin right now, I would use somewhere around 3 or 4 cc's, and that's all. I know that's not a lot of air, but that's all that's necessary. What you want to do is maximize the seal pressure and minimize the intracuff pressure. And so you want to do is use small amounts of air with airQ because of the small internal volume. Now, typically when I place these devices, I use the red tag on. I place the device, I close the APL valve, and I check the seal pressure after I pull the tag off, before I put any air in. About half the time, I don't have to add any air in at all. In other words, the shape and the size are just about perfect. The other half of the time, I have to put my little bits of air. Now, if you put a little bit of air and you check your seal pressure and you're not comfortable yet with the ventilation, it's best just to back the airQ up a little bit. Don't add a whole bunch of more air. Now, when first people learn how to put airQs in, they tend to want to push them in a little too far. Now, airQ won't back up automatically during insertion like an LMA because the cuff is built differently. So sometimes you have to physically just back it up a little bit. Now, I don't back it up right away. I wait and make sure that I'm not comfortable with the ventilatory leak pressure first. So I have three things I do. I first check the APL valve with no insertion of air. Secondly, I put a little bit of air in. And the last thing, I'll adjust the position of the airQ to maximize the flow of air.